Right, a little while ago I showed how to make this bench vise mounted belt sander using the Drillpro angle grinder attachment and this 500 watt treadmill motor, and this is absolutely brilliant for my needs. And the reason that I went over to the treadmill motor was because the angle grinders are way too noisy, particularly in my metal workshop. I went over to this one because it's so much quieter and nicer to use. And having such a small workshop, this is absolutely brilliant because it's quick and easy to actually load up in the vise, and then I can actually do the work on it. When I finish, take it out the vise and put it on the back of the bench out of the way. I've got a big belt sander, but a small one like this is absolutely excellent for smaller work where you don't need a big belt sander, particularly for sharpening knives and things like that, cleaning up metal or whatever. And these belts are relatively cheap to buy compared with the large belt sander, so if you can get away with using this one, it's obviously more economical to use. And I was thinking today that if I didn't have a treadmill motor, what would I do to actually use this one? And I've come up with another idea of actually mounting this one on the Chinese Mini Lathe as an attachment to go on the lathe. And you can use this method if you don't want to buy a treadmill motor or you don't want to use the angle grinder. So this is it only takes about an hour to make at the most, and made out of just 2 Allen bolts, a block of wood and 2 pieces of brass. It can't damage the lathe in any way, and it's quick and easy just to mount up and use. And after use it's quick and easy to actually take off the lathe. That's just a piece of bar that I've put in the chuck there for driving the belt. And then it's just a case of loosening the Allen bolts. You take the brass piece off the front underneath the ways. So unscrew that Allen bolt all the way and that will drop off. And then just lift it off of the lathe. So I've just used a block of wood which is 39mm thick. You can use 40mm. It's hardwood, and I've cut out a groove here to actually go over the front raised part of the ways on the mini lathe. The existing holes that were in the attachment I drilled out for 8mm bolts. They're a little bit smaller than that, so I drilled them out in obviously exactly the same position. and that actually fits over the ways, those two positions of those bolts, so that was very good. I didn't have to do any alterations on that. And then I've just made two brass pieces. These are pieces of scrap brass. They're about 8mm thick there, or something like that. 6mm thick, and that one clips under the ways at the back here. So put it on like that and put that under the back so it just hooks under. And then I've got this thicker piece. This is a 1/2 inch piece of brass with the 8mm thread at the back there. That one just goes under the ways at the front, and then it's just a case of tightening those two bolts down. So just nip that one up by hand. And this is the 10mm adapter which came with the Drillpro attachment. That's for going on the angle grinder. And all I did was choose a bar similar in size to that. It's probably about 2 or 3mm larger than that, but it doesn't matter. It's only for driving the belt. And then put that one down into the chuck and push it home. Tighten that up nice and tight, and then when that's done, you push the actual attachment to a nice square position, and enough bar obviously coming through this side to actually fully hold the belt, and then just tighten down the bolts, or the Allen bolts, making sure that the attachment, like I say, is nice and square with the bar. And obviously being wood, it's not going to affect the ways at all, and the brass won't actually mark the ways either. And if you want to, you can actually put a square on this and check it's nice and square to the actual drive bar. And when you're making this, all you just have to do really is get this bar so it's clear of this hole. It doesn't matter, mine's quite a way out this way, but it's obviously the right height. And like I say, you don't have to be critical in any way, because you've got the spring tensioner which brings the belt up to tension anyway. And then you get the belt. It has arrows on this one to mark the direction. Put it on the top there like that. Push this assembly down and put it over the rollers. And before starting up, you can actually move the rollers like that with the lathe manually like that, and just see that it's going to run true on the rollers. It may go one way. If it does, you've got this adjustment here, so I could screw that one up a little bit and it should go back over. Just push it on there now and just see what happens. It's still riding up a bit on that one. That looks about right. And then just start it up in a slow speed and see how it goes. And you can see there that my lathe has been geared down a bit and my top speed is just over 1000 RPM. It would be better a bit faster than that for these type of belts. I'd reckon around 1500 to 2000. So if you have an ordinary Chinese mini lathe that hasn't been adapted like mine, you can obviously get those speeds. I could do if I put a smaller pulley on the motor or adjust the VFD. I'm not going to do that because I use my other belt sander. I won't be using this one in the future. I've just made this to show you what you can do. And again, on the Chinese mini lathe or any other lathe really, it's great having variable speed on a belt sander like this. I use these for shaping brass and other metals. I've used it for shaping plastic, cleaning rust off tools. There's terrific uses for this type of thing. The only thing I'd say that if you do this on the lathe, make sure that you clean the ways off afterwards, or even cover them up with some kitchen towel. Never use cloth because it can actually get caught up in the lathe or the belt sander. Just a bit of kitchen towel or cling film over the ways can protect it from any of the dust, or just clean it off afterwards, blow it off and oil it up well, and that'll save any damage to the ways at all. And I would think this idea could actually be used on many different types of lathes. I reckon you could actually fit it on a woodwork lathe as well. You could even fit it on the actual back of the lathe. And having attachments like this makes the lathe so much more versatile. And this actual Drillpro attachment is a really good idea. Whoever thought of it and made it, I find it's absolutely brilliant for doing the bevels on knives and other tools. The rollers here have proper roller bearings either side, so it's really good. And I actually think it's a really well made piece of kit.